Hello, welcome to Octopus Do. I'm Kristen Ross, and give me just one moment here. We have a cat boss in the way. Mr. Nero stopped in to say hi, but he's got to go. As I was saying, welcome to Octopus Do. Today we're going to continue our peyote stitch tutorials with the odd count peyote stitch. We've been doing the even count, which is very easy because once you get to the end of the row, all you have to do is just keep adding beads and you go to the next row. Odd count peyote stitch, however, requires a little bit of backtracking, and you know, we're gonna figure this out together. I've got a diagram and you know, we'll take it one bite at a time. So let's get started. Even count peyote stitch is easier in my opinion. However, there are times where you might want an odd count for your design needs. Basically, say you wanted to have a design that comes down to a chevron, a triangular point in the middle, or has a single middle piece, then you need an odd number to get that. If you were to do an even count, then you'd have 2 beads in the center instead of just 1. I started an example of that just to show you what I'm talking about. I've got a little piece of odd count peyote stitch here with a triangular design that comes to a point in the middle. This particular design uses 7 beads across, and that gives me 3 on either side of that single point. I do suggest you try out the even count peyote stitch before you try to tackle the odd, but if you have gone through the other tutorials I've done so far, then you're ready for odd count. First, I'll show you how that works with my signature letter beads. So let's go with that. Now I'm going to start one letter at a time, so if you wanted to follow along, these are just wooden beads with an alphabet printed on them I picked up in the Kids Craft section. So we'll start out, of course, with the letter A. And I've made a kind of makeshift needle just with a piece of wire. And the thread that I'm using for this is an S-Lon. Just wanted something a little bit thicker than my normal fire line so you could see what I was doing. Have my letter A here, and you know, I never did put on a stop bead, so let's do that. Just going to take a large seed bead and actually tie that in a knot, and that way my letters won't fall off the end. All right, so I have A, B, so I've strung my alphabet A through G, which gives me 7 beads on this first row, but it's really kind of the first 2 rows because you know they kind of hopscotch, zigzag when you start adding beads, just like regular peyote stitch. So the next bead that I'm going to add will be the letter H, and that will be the first bead of that next row. So I have G, I'll add H. This H is going to fold over and sit on top of the G, like so. Now I have my thread coming out this side, so it goes back through the F. You pull that tight. So I've gone this direction, and I've gone around, and now I'm sewing back this way. Now, I've got 2 strings going in, one going out of the F. So I'm going to add my next bead. Oh, and if you're keeping track, that H should be up top of the G. There we go. So next letter is my I. I sew through that, and it will sit on top of the E. So far, this should seem familiar because this is pretty much exactly like even count. I've got I and my 2 threads, so I sew back through the D and pull that tight. So you see this path, it goes D, E, F, G, back up through H, back through the F, I through the D. So pick up J. That will sit on top of the C. Go through the B. Make sure you're pulling everything tight. All right, now here is where it's different. If you were working with even count, then the next step would be to go up, like add a B, go up a row, and then go back through. But we need to look at what's happening here. There's an A, but I can't just go through this A because that would be a single bead and then a single bead. So what I have to do is I pick up the next letter, which would be my K, and it's going to sit on top of that A. We're going to do a little magic to get it to stay. So there we go. There's the K. And it sits on top of the A. What I have to do is I get my thread, basically I have to figure out a way to go around so that my thread is coming out of the K going in the opposite direction. So what I do is I sew down into the A, and that secures the K to the A, which are the end beads. So I sew down one so that the end beads are stuck together. And I make sure I've got that stop bead out of the way and pull it tight. So now these two are at least stuck together and my thread is coming out of that bottom row with the A. Now, since I only have these basically 3 rows, it's first row, second row, third row, we're going to go diagonal. We're going to go A, B, J. So diagonally up, and we'll be coming out of the J. So A, we've gone through. B, we go through and pull tight, and J, we go through. So we've gone diagonally up through all 3 rows. It's 3 rows and 3 columns that we've gone up, like so. So now we're coming out of the J right here. Now, here's where your thread path is going to be very important, because I wanted to let you know if you're going up and down in the same column, you are not going to be able to see that thread. So that's what we're going to do here, is we're going to go from this J, we're going to go down a row, back through the C. So it's coming out of the J here. We go down a row and go back through the C, then through the B, down through the A. So I don't want to get ahead here. So we'll go J, down through the C. Okay, so basically I've gone from the J to the C here, up through that B, and pull that tight, making sure that my thread doesn't get caught anywhere weird, which it's trying to. There we go. All right, so I've gone down, up through the B, down through the A. So basically we are turning our thread around, the direction around. Okay, now we can go back up to the K and go in the direction we want to go to start adding new beads. Now I know this looks a little confusing, but don't worry, I'm going to explain it a couple of different ways and hopefully it will become a little bit more clear. Basically, you're going to go through to the end and you're kind of turning a circle and back up so that you're coming out in the right direction to go back the other way. You have to do that at the end of all the rows that end on that one side. Once you're going in the right direction again, then all you have to do is just start adding your beads in the holes like your regular peyote stitch. So right here, we're coming out of the K. So now I have L, and I go through the J there. Then M, go through the I. All right, letter N, goes to the H, and there we go. So you line everything up. So this is pretty much 3 rows. And you can see where the next row is going to sit on top of the H and just be a regular row, because over here is where we're going around in the circles to line everything up. So O is the next letter, so I slide down and it will sit on top right there. Go through the N. P there, and we'll go back to the M. R will go on the end and tighten everything up. On the end again where these two are not connected, and therefore we have to circle around to connect those. So we go down the row and sew through these diagonals, so K, L, and Q. And got everything all tangled up there. Pull it, so make sure everything is pulled tight. So I'm coming out of the Q, so go down the J, and that thread just tucks right in. Go through the L, that is in between those. Go back down in through the end of the K. Pull everything tight, and then you go up through the R again and you're ready to start the next row. And you repeat this for as many rows as you need. So the trick to odd count peyote stitch is to do that little going around and then back down through in kind of a little hump, out the end, and then through. Again, this is one of the more confusing concepts in peyote stitch, but once you get this down, really, you're going to be able to do just about anything. Let me show you how to start that particular triangle pattern that you saw earlier. First thing I'll do, I've got my needle and thread already strung. I'm using Fireline in a size 6 pound, and I'm using size 11 Delica seed beads. So I'm just going to pour a few seed beads out. And I'm using 2 different colors here so you can see what I'm doing. Let's put a stop bead on the end because we don't want those falling off. So I pick up 1 bead and I slide that bead all the way down to the end. Then I'm going to come back through making a circle. So it's not really tied on, it's just friction that's going to hold that in place. Now I'm ready to start beading without all my beads falling off. So I pick up 7 beads, and that's going to be my first 2 rows. That's 7 beads. Slide those down, and I don't want to go tight against my stop bead there. So I just hold my stop bead and hold my delegates in my fingers. Now I'm going to pick up my next bead, and that's the one that's going to go onto the next row. So I skip that very end and I go through the next one. And I'm going to pull that tight. I pick up another bead. And I keep doing that until I get to the end of the row. So now that I've gotten to the end of the row, you can see here, they're not connected, the ends aren't connected. So I have to sew back down through the first bead that I put on. So I'm coming back from the opposite direction and sewing back through, and that will cinch them up. Now I do that diagonal trick where I'm going to sew up through the second and the third rows. I'm going through those 2 beads. Now I have to come back down. So I come down the same column and through that bead on the bottom. Then through the middle connector. Through the very first bead that I've added. Pull everything tight. Now I'm coming out that very first bead that I went in, and I have to go back up through the last one I added. And I'm ready to start adding more beads. And what I'm going to do with the next row is I'm going to make that the cream color so you can see the new beads that I'm adding this time. So I pick up a cream color bead here, and I'm going to add it to this design. All right, my thread is coming out of that row, so I go through this bead, and that snaps that cream color one right into that space. All right, I'm going to pick another one and add into this, sew through here, add into this, and sew through the end. Now I'm just going to go back through those just like even count. So I'll add a bead, go through here, add a bead, go through here, so on and so forth until I reach the end. So this last bead isn't really attached to anything, so remember what we do with him? We sew back through the row before and do our fancy turnaround. I go through previous row and diagonally up. The next step is to go to the row below, so I'm going down the column and pull everything tight. Then I go through the connector, and then out of the previous row and back into the top row. And I'm ready for a new row. So you continue that process until you get to the end of your piece, and then remember, just sew in the extra thread, watch the other videos for tips on how to add more thread if you need to. But there you go. That's a good beginner start for how to do the odd count peyote stitch. So I hope you have a lot of fun with it, and I'd love to see what you make. So look me up on Facebook, write me a line, and let me know how it goes for you. Hope you enjoy this tutorial. Until next time, go make something.